Hi everyone, welcome back to another TFT Masterclass. Today we are going to be talking about the best comps to play on this current patch, which is going to be 14.11. Super exciting stuff. Although this was not a huge patch, the power did shift a little bit within the top comps, so we'll be talking about those and laying out exactly what you need to do this patch to get your LP. So let's get straight into it. Remember, if you do want that Cloud9 jersey, all you have to do is sub, comment, and like, and that will get your name in the draw, and hopefully we'll get that out soon. So 5 comps on 14.11, here we go. So there are going to be 4 standard comps, which means just non-reroll. Faded Dryad Syndra is back. We'll talk about why it is back, why it's good, and how to play the new one. To be honest, not too many changes. Sniper Warden Ashe, why it's good again in the meta. Kind of a new one, a Storyweaver Illaoi. A couple different ways you could play this line, but it is very, very strong. Sage Lillia, and then our reroll comp is going to be Ghostly Zyra / Zoe. Also, I will be talking about Duelists at the very end, talking about the state of Duelists, why I did not include it in here, and whether or not it's playable. It is still playable, don't worry. So basically a guide just to let you know what to play on the new patch. There are a lot of buffs, there are a lot of nerfs, either to like units or items or comps in general, so we'll cover all that today, and hopefully get you all set for the new patch. At the very end, we'll do a recap and a Q&A for any of those who are watching this live in the Fit Game Returning Grounds Discord. Alright, so the first one we are going to talk about is Faded Dryad Syndra. So this comp has been around for quite a while. It has been through the ringer, as they say. There are a lot of buffs to it recently, and then there were some nerfs again, and now it has been previously buffed again, as you see from the bottom left here. Basically, although the starting butterflies, which is like her orbs, were lowered from 7 to 6, the ability damage per orb was increased. So I'll talk about that on the next slide, how that affects her current kits, but we'll just do an intro first. So this is level 8 board, single target magic damage burst composition, with Syndra being our main carry and our main traits being Faded and Dryad. This is a really good comp that for countering Duelists because of the single target burst, and then also because of the recent buffs. For example, like the Syndra ability buffs is now quite back into the meta. So the way Faded works, you're going to link 2 Faded units, as you know, and then those 2 Faded units will get 2 things. First, they'll gain 20% max HP. So since we will be linking Syndra as one of ours, getting a little bit of HP on our main carry is super important and quite helpful. And then they will be getting a Faded bonus. In this case, it will be the Syndra Ahri bind, so percent bonus just damage and AP from the Ahri. Remember, because we are going to be binding these 2 Faded units and not Thresh, then Warden will be our main tank, hence the 4 Dryad. That is essentially the whole purpose of this build. So let's get into it and see what it looks like. So this is going to be our high roll level 8 board because we have that set in Azir. If we do not have that set in Azir, then it's okay to just play that Yasuo instead of the set, or Rek'Sai instead of the Azir, especially if we have little buddies. And if you don't hit these, but you hit like a random Annie 2, then definitely play that instead. So that is the units of the board. Getting into the BIS, the first one we'll talk about is Syndra, of course. So her best in slot is going to be Jewel Gauntlet as her 3rd item. And then for the first two, you have a couple different options. You can either do blue buff plus Snashers, blue buff plus adaptive, or 2 adaptive cones. You want to make sure that you follow these quite strictly and don't mix it up. For example, you do not want Nashers plus adaptive. That does not work very well and does not synergize with her kits. The way these 3 builds work, make sure that she is casting as often as possible and as efficiently. So then remember, the more you cast, the more butterflies you generate and the more damage you will output. The reason why we want Jewel Gauntlet over Rabadons on Syndra is because she is linked with Ahri. She is already receiving a lot of percentage bonus damage. Since we have 5 Faded in, this is 200%. So then 11% is her base, so you'll be getting 22% bonus damage on that Syndra, which is why we'd prefer the extra crit damage from the Jewel Gauntlet over that extra 20% bonus damage from the Rabadons. So that is your Syndra best in slots. It's quite flexible as long as you have a blue buff. And for our Ornn, which is going to be our frontline main tank, we're going to be itemizing. We want a Spark on him, and then any mana / AP tank item. So this is like Adaptive Helm or Crown Guard on him. And then mana items, either like Protector's Vow or Redemption, work on him quite fine. So then he is able to print an item ASAP. So as I mentioned, I want to talk about why the Syndra buffs brought this comp back into the top of the meta. So the way the buff worked, remember, she starts with less starting butterflies, but now the damage per butterfly is increased. So the way it works is technically her 1 star is not changed too much. At the start of the combat, she'll be a little bit weaker. By like the third cast, it's about even, and by the fourth cast of a 1-star Syndra, she will now be dealing more damage compared to the previous patch. However, for 2-star, now by the second cast is going to be a buff. So that's pretty good for Syndra. It's a Syndra buff mostly for 2-star. And then I already talked about Yasuo and Rek'Sai. Positioning wise, there's a current bug right now of Behemoths not receiving that transferable on Behemoth death, granting bonus resistances to the nearby Behemoth if there is a unit between them. So make sure that your Behemoths are adjacent, and because enemy carries are normally on the outsides, you want to be putting Thresh on the outside, and then once Thresh dies, that long duration of bonus Behemoth resistance, because the nearest Behemoth died, will go over to the Ornn, and we want that Ornn to stay alive as possible, to cast as many times as possible, and to keep that spark alive. No pun intended. The very last one is going to be Annie on level 9, gives us Invoker, a frontline unit, and just as long as our frontline survives, our Syndra will continue casting, dealing more damage, and just obliterating the whole board. So that is what the board looks like. And then, as I said, Annie here on level 9. We could also itemize our set with like QS or Quicksilver. Both of these items are extremely good on him. And then BIS Augments. Anything that is in bold is going to be your BIS. So little buddies, we have a good amount of little buddies. For our big buddies here, we only have 1/3 cost. So that is irrelevant for that augments. But Boom is really good because of 2 units. One, Syndra, of course, because she is casting so often, you will be getting that second cast bonus damage off quite often. And then also Kindred, the way her ability works is because she kind of like jumps and fires 2 bolts, she procs Boom twice. So these 2 are really good for her, mainly for Syndra because of she's going to be a main carry, but at least Kindred can benefit from it as well. Jewel Lotus, this means that we don't need to build Jewel Gauntlet anymore, and instead we could build a Gunblade, which is very good. Basically a 4-item Syndra. And then Calmcaster is our last best one because we have a blue buff and are casting very often. A couple other really good augments here. Yeah, I won't go over to those, but this is going to be the Syndra comp, and definitely one that you should play on this current patch. Okay, moving on, Sniper Warden Ashe. So this is a comp that we kind of all know how to play now. Level 8 physical damage comp. We want to be going level 9 as soon as we establish a good board on stage 4. Requires a lot of bows, either plus Last Whisper and a Ginsu's Rage Blade are going to be our default 80 composition. Quite a good comp because we could Tekken Exalted quite frequently depending on what it is. Sometimes there's like a frontline one or like a backline one, and then we could just add an extra one either with new recruit or on level 9, or just by taking away a 4th sniper. I'll talk about this a little bit later. And then because we are a physical damage comp, we will be requiring Sunder. So this is what our board is going to look like. Quite simple. We've talked about this in our previous classes. 4 sniper in the back, 4 wardens in the front line, with our 2 main carries being Ashe, our 2 main itemized units being Ashe and Illaoi. Remember, Illaoi is a little bit better of a tank than Amumu. However, if you do hit that Amumu 2 first, then make sure you itemize that Amumu over the Illaoi. Ashe best in slot is going to be Rage Blade. Last Whisper +1 is either going to be an Infinity Edge or Deathblade or Gunblade, depending on your item economy and the enemy boards in your lobby. I already talked about the main items, and then any mana items like Vow is really good on Nautilus. If you do have Redemption, however, make sure you put that on the Amumu, and then make sure that Amumu is adjacent to your Illaoi. Regarding positioning, there's 2 main ways you want to go about this. The first one in general is just opposite side of enemy carry. Technically, we are a stall comp with this Rage Blade, so the longer the fight goes, the better it is for us. There's 2 different ways that we can also position, is clumping versus spreading. So we could clump / focus fire. So what this means is putting like our Senna, our Phelios, and our Ashe on the same side. This is really good against boards that have single target damage, and we're just trying to focus fire and pierce through one side. So for example, Duelists. However, if we are against AoE boards, so like Lillia or Morgana's, then we will have to spread out in this type of positioning where we put our more irrelevant units clumped together on one side to bait Morgana ults, to bait Lillia orbs, and then Ashe is solo isolated in the opposite corner, so then she is able to stay as safe as possible. Quite a simple comp. On level 9, we're going to add Syndra to activate that Faded and Arcanist, and we are good to go. Let's install augments to go with this comp. Long shot, very good, giving our snipers extra attack speed and then giving us a full sniper's focus after a bit. Spirit Gardens because we have our wardens, sniper crest or crown. 6 sniper is really strong in this comp. In that case, you have to make sure you're holding onto a Kog'Maw, and then on level 9 you just play the Kog'Maw and then sniper's focus some frontline unit that has an open slot, either set or Nautilus, The reason why it's so good, well, first off, is just a lot of damage. The second part is with 6 sniper, your snipers actually gain 2 extra range of 2 extra hex range. So then you're attacking even farther away from your opponents and dealing even more damage because of the 6 snipers. So definitely make sure you play 6 sniper if you have a chance. Pumping up 1, 2, or 3 is very good. We want a lot of attack speed in this composition, and the more attack speed we have, the better. So those are going to be our best augments to go along with this composition. Okay, moving on. So we kind of have a new one here, Illaoi Storyweavers. If you knew about our off meta video, we talked about reroll Zoe, and that is going to be one of the ways that we could play this comp. We could either go fast 8, magic damage, burst, or we can also reroll this composition, or a mix of both. So I'll talk about what that looks like on the next slide. The reason why this is good, Zoe plus our Kale, we're able to burst down these duelist compositions, especially that Lee Sin with our high magic damage. This composition is best with the Storyweaver +1 emblem. And then because we are a magic damage composition, we will be needing either a spark or a shiv. So let's get into what the comp looks like. Here it is. It's going to be Zoe, Illaoi, Storyweavers. So early game, we could tempo with that classic 3 Storyweaver opener and itemize your Zyra and your Riven, and then play like a Rek'Sai to pair with that Riven frontline, 2 Bruiser. Pretty good early game. And then once we get into our late game, then we want to be rolling for that 7 Storyweaver on level 8. So something like this, if we don't have Irelia, then you'll be forced to play Sivir, and then ideally you have a Storyweaver +1. And remember, or not remember, but once you get to that point, then you can make a decision to either stay level 8, reroll for that Zoe plus Illaoi 3 as your win con, or you look to push level 9 and go for that Irelia 2 Rakan 2 win con instead. So this would be a look around in the lobby. Let's say there are no like Ashe players or no Arcanist players, and it's like, oh, Illaoi's free. Or even like no ghostly players. Well, normally this will not be the case because those comps are quite meta right now. However, it's up to your lobby just to find your win con and either go for the reroll option or push 9. And then who knows if you're able to push 9 quite early because you either have like an econ region, econ augment, or you're just win streaking really hard, then you can still try to hit that Zoe 3 on level 9 as well, although it will be a lot harder because of the shop odds. Couple last things, Spark will either go on your Illaoi, or you could just put a Shiv on your Zyra or Morgana. And then your last one is going to be, you want triple blue on Kale. Although Kale already gets a lot of attack speed, even I'm talking about the first scroll, it's still very good for giving your early Zoe and early Zyra some ability power. And then the other two will green Talisman of Aid. You could just build a Spark or a Shiv, which you want to be doing anyway. And then the attack speed on Kale, her auto attacks don't do that much damage, and it will allow her to cast a little bit often, but the blue being able to support the Zyra and Zoe are quite useful as well. So this is the board. Make sure you give your Zoe a Shojin, Nashers, and Rabadons, or you could also give her a Jewel Gauntlets. However, Rabadons is better. Healing reduction will go on your Irelia along with a Gunblade or a Runons, and then make sure you stack your frontline tanks, the Illaoi and the Galio, with whichever items you have. Best install augments to go with this comp, of course, is going to be that Story +1, as I mentioned. So either Storyweaver Crest or Crown. Call to Adventure allows us to start stacking up our Kale damage early. Jewel Lotus 3, kind of the same concept as that like 4 item Syndra. By having Jewel Lotus 3, we don't need to build Jewel Gauntlet. We can build something else like Rabadons, and then we have like effectively a 4 item Zoe, very good. Learn to Dispel, kind of the same thing as Call to Adventure. And then Magic Wand, we could use a lot of rods in this composition, even like a Morello instead of the red buff. So Magic Wand is very good, and we'll give our whole team AP as well. So very good comp. If you have a Storyweaver +1, then you could definitely look to angle this and get your easy top 4. All right, we are nearing the end, kind of. The next one is going to be the Sage Mythic Lillia composition. Not touched too much. The only main thing about this is because of the Duelist nerfs, the composition is a little bit stronger. Lillia really struggled into Duelists because she is a AoE damage composition as opposed to like single target burst. So she along with Morgana had a really hard time bursting that Lee Sin that was able to sustain through the damage. And then also if any of the melee units got in front of Lillia, her cast would kind of hop over the enemy in front of her and not directly hit them. So because of the Duelist nerfs, this composition indirectly got buffed. So that's the first part, and then the second one is Nautilus got a extra 10 mana nerf. Nothing too crazy. You normally cast once and dies anyway, unfortunately, so I don't think that's that big of a deal. This is what our board looks like on level 8. Quite simple. 3 Mythic, 3 Sage, and we have a lot of other good traits, which is why like Stand United is very good. Opposite side, Lillia, as opposed compared to the enemy backline carry, so you're able to get that full board wide bowling ball. Lillia best in slot. Because we have 2 Invoker, we're going to be wanting that Shojin. Remember, if you have 4 or 6 Invoker, then you want Blue Buff or Helm instead. But with 2 Invoker, you definitely want that Shojin. And then 2 AP items, either Rabadons and Jewel Gauntlet, which I think are the best. Jewel Gauntlet plus Guardbreaker, or any addition of like Helm, Archangel, Gunblade, or Nashers. That's for Lillia. For Morgana, also quite simple, just mana plus healing reduction. So either like a Shojin and Morello, Helm plus red buff, any of these are fine. Morgana won't do too much damage. She'll help clean off, or at least like damage some of the backline units that Lillia hits, but it's mainly about applying that healer reduction to the enemy backline. Spark either on Illaoi or Shiv on the Morgana or Janna. Illaoi is going to be our main tank in this composition, and any mana items will be going onto that Nautilus. On level 9, we can add in our Rakan, and the board is done. Pass in slot. Sage, Mythic, Crest Crown, very good here. And then Unleash Arcana, giving us that Rabadon's Jewel Gauntlet and a Rod is basically the best we can ask for. It's 2 out of 3 on our Lillia items, and then that Rod can flex into a Morello or a Spark for our front line. So definitely keep a lookout for this Prismatic Augment. That'll help us out a lot. So not too much to change about this comp. It's been around for a bit. Just a small few changes helping it bring it back into the meta. Okay, leading into one of our last comps here, and then I'll talk about Duelists really quickly after, is our Ghostly Zyra / Zoe reroll. It's been around for a bit, our level 7 magic damage reroll comp. It's really good, allowing us to burst Duelists with our Spectres. Once our Spectres have like clumped up on a individual enemy, we're able to deal a lot of bonus damage to them. And since, remember, we are magic damage composition and Ghostly is magic damage, we will be needing Shred. This is what our board looks like. It's going to be 4 Ghostly, and then we have Riven, Aatrox, Illaoi, Shen in the front line, with Shen being our main tank and Illaoi being our secondary, and our main damage dealer either being Zyra or Zoe, depending how our rolls are looking on level 7 and what other boards are players playing in the current lobby. The way we want to play this is, first you want to stabilize on level 6, establish a 2-star version of this board. You can either just play like, if you don't have Morgana, then just play like 3 Ghostly, and then that's fine. Just have at least Storyweaver, Arcanist, Bruiser in. Once you have a 2-star version of this board, you can slowly go up to level 7 and then slow roll for this board for that Shen 3 and that Zyra 3. Remember, it's not too crazy of a deal going from 6 to 7 for 2-cost odds, and this will even really bump our odds of 2-starring our Illaoi, which is quite important, and 2-starring our Zoe, or perhaps we hit a lot of Zoes and then we'll just main carry Zoe instead of the Zyra. For positioning wise, as you see, we want to clump our Ghostly units on the same side of the board. Ideally, this is opposite side of the enemy carry, so that way this gives us time for Shen to tank, soak up damage, and allow our Ghostly Spectres to come out and haunt the same side where our Zyra is. So that way Zyra is, or even Zoe, our main damage is able to hit the enemies that have Spectres on them, and that way you are allowed, or you're able to effectively clear and efficiently clear out the enemy board that way. You want to have either Spark or Shiv in this composition, so either Spark on Illaoi or Shiv on your Morgana or Zoe or Zyra, depending on who you're main carrying. One thing to note, a lot of players are saying, or even people are just saying Shiv goes on Zoe because her passive, if you don't know, if Zoe gets a takedown, her ability will ricochet one more time. So I think the way it works is Shiv does not count as a takedown unless it gets a kill with the Shiv, which is going to be not that often. Once again, like, Shiv is still a good item on Zoe. It's just it's more so about just like an item holder and applying Shred, as opposed to primarily putting Shiv on her just for the Zoe passive. So still good. Just remember that's not exactly how the Shiv interaction works. And then hero reduction is not as important in this composition because of our burst, and also Zyra provides a little bit. And then on level 8, we could either just play a 2-star Diana or any 5-cost unit like Udyr, Wukong, or even 2 Behemoth with Ornn if we're 2 out of 3 on an item on an important frontline tank. Okay, best in slot augments, 2 healthy, we have a lot of 2 cost units. So even though the augment did get nerfed, it's still very good. It's effectively 400 health, a little bit less for our entire board, so that's good. Haunted House, we have an insane amount of ghostly units. We're playing vertical ghostly, so of course Haunted House would be good. And then Ghostly Crest will allow us to play 6 ghostly on level 8 quite easily. Okay, the very last one, I didn't include it in the very front table of contents, but it's going to be the Duelist comp. So the reason why I did not put it in, I think it's still a good comp. It's probably still like low S tier. However, it's not going to be our default AD composition anymore. It's still going to be our default melee composition over Kayn. However, the comp is just not as good as it was compared to last patch. It was recently nerfed, which really targeted the early plus mid game of this composition. And then the nerfs to the support items such as Moonstone also took a hit because in this composition you did want to take a lot of support augments and get that Moonstone, etc. You play it basically the exact same. You want a tempo, you want to get that Irelia ASAP, and then go level 9 to 2-star your legendaries, so like your Wukong and Irelia and even your Rakan. You don't want to be staying level 7 and rolling for that Tristana Volibear. That's not the meta anymore for this. Lee Sin holds your bruiser items, Volibear holds your tank items, and then Tristana eventually holds your Irelia items, and you want to swap that over as soon as you get an Irelia and a backup Tristana. You kind of have an interesting spot on level 8 where you have 6 duelists and you also have 2 open slots. So if you do have a Wukong, then definitely play that Diana for 2 Sage. However, if you do not have a Wukong, then you can just play like a Malphite and a York instead for 2 Behemoth, Heavenly, a little bit of resistance for your entire team, and Umbral to get Umbral because you'll have a Darius at this point for a flat shield for your combat duelist, which is going to be quite good. One thing to note, a positive for this composition is there was a bug fix over for Irelia, so now she can hold Infinity Edge quite, I don't know if it's quite well, but she can at least hold Infinity Edge. Her crit mechanic was fixed before Infinity Edge was actually, I think, detrimental on her, so now that has been fixed, her crit is able to be done quite properly now. And regarding positioning, one of 2 things. If you're against AoE damage like that Lillia that I was talking about, you want a same side, and then it's really hard for that Lillia to kill you. And then if you're against single target damage, such as the Syndra, you want to opposite side the Syndra, so your Lee Sin has time to stack up his stacks, either from his Titans or from his just like duelist stacks in general, and able to clear more of the enemy board before that Syndra gets to you. So that's how the positioning works, and that's just how the composition works in general. And then main augments to go for, Duelist Crest and Crown is very good. Keepers is probably the best augment in this composition. Fine Vintage, I think it's still good for this comp, although the support items did get nerfed, so it just went from like really OP, or at least like very strong, to just like good or strong. So still takeable. And then Freaky Friday giving us those Infinity Forces work very well for our melee duelists. So that will wrap up everything for today. I'll do a quick recap and then we'll hop into a Q&A for anyone who is watching this live. Today we talked about the 5 best comps to play on the current patch 14.11, where 4 of them are non-reroll and then 1 of them is reroll. We talked about the coming back of Syndra, just being good against duelists, and also Syndra just getting a buff, the Faded Dryad Syndra composition. Sniper Warden, just a very good composition in general. If you have the items for it, then definitely go for it. Storyweaver Zoe Illaoi, you want to play with a +1 Storyweaver, and you have your choice to either reroll Zoe and Illaoi on level 8 for that 3-star, or go level 9 and play around your legendaries instead. And then Sage Lillia having a little bit of an easier time because its main counter, Lee Sin Duelist, did get nerfed in the early to mid game because of the Darius and Kiana damage nerfs and the support items. Our very last one was our Ghostly Zyra / Zoe reroll, and then we talked about how Duelist is faring in the current meta. So that is everything for today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you join our Discord in the description so you can catch these classes live and then stay after for questions or just bonus info, and that'll be it. So hopefully see you all in the next video. Take care and have a great night.